Hi, everyone. Welcome to our next episode of Incident Management Cafe. Today's a little bit special for a couple of reasons. I think it's our first cafe where everyone actually has coffee. And additionally, we have a special guest with us, a different special guest than the last time, Josh English. Josh English is a customer success manager here at AlertOps and interacts pretty heavily with our MSP clients. Thanks for being on, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. And as usual, we have our VP of Technology and my co-host Robert Crum on as well. Hi, Bob. Thanks for being on.
Hey Cam, this week's special is Irish coffee because, of course, St.
Same
Patrick's Day.
day.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. So,
Of course. Cool. But what we wanted to talk about today is really just stakeholder communication with respect to MSPs, right? And I think that we hear that quite a bit with respect to the managed services space in terms of anything from break fixes to offline servers to something as simple as a password reset. People want to know what's going on. So, Josh, based on your interaction with some of these managed service providers, what type of value do they actually stress on communicating throughout the course of an incident or throughout the course of a service request and making sure that their customers are completely up to date as far as having any visibility in the process? So, how important is that based on your knowledge?
Based on the feedback that I've received from a number of customers, it's paramount. You have these MSPs who have contracts with their customers for managing their services. The customer wants to know that they're doing the work. They want to see what they're getting for their money. Obviously, they don't want an incident to happen to find this out, but that visibility is very important. And the customers that I've spoken with, that's going to be something very, very useful to them. If something happens at 3 in the morning, they've got that visibility there to be able to keep that customer in the loop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you bring up a good point, right? Unless they are consistently being communicated with, or unless that they know when they should be communicated with, the only way that they're probably going to say, "Hey, I need to know when something's gone wrong," is when something goes wrong, right? And getting to that point is probably a step too far. So a bit
Yeah,
more
yeah, sometimes
proactive.
it may seem like a thankless job.
Yep, of course. But yeah, so then from that standpoint, I guess what would you say is the best mechanism of outreach, right? Is it just that I have an offline server and you, as my managed service provider, let me know when it's back up? Or would you encourage communicating kind of different steps of that process along the way?
I think it's going to depend not only on the MSP's culture, it's going to also depend on the customer because you're going to have MSPs with maybe those top tier customers, the gold standard that wants that constant communication. They want to know, they want to be aware of things before they're happening. They want to have updates, things like that. The channels of communication obviously are going to depend on both of those factors. You're going to probably have some customers that, maybe an email is fine if something's happening. They just want to know that the MSP is there working on it. They have that comfort level. They want to know they're getting their money, their money's worth for that relationship. A third factor to consider would be the SLA requirements with between some of these MSPs and their customers. That is going to greatly dictate not only the channel of communication, but when it happens, how immediate and what kind of updates happen from there. Because obviously that's going to have direct and indirect damage or consequences rather between that relationship. So it could be financial, but beyond that, those indirect damages or consequences could be reputation. And so there's a lot of factors to consider, and that's kind of where we go deeper with the customer, with the MSP to find out what kind of contracts do they have, what relationships do they have, what kind of commitments do they have, and what kind of visibility do they want to provide to their customers, or are their customers in need from them?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that that's also pretty interesting just from a standpoint of not just MSP generically, but very specifically MSSP, right? Managed security service providers, because those SLAs for them mean something completely different from the SLA that a mom and pop cupcake shop has for their POS system. So from a security standpoint, I think that the financial implications on an organization that's managing an IT infrastructure, as well as the security portion of that, starts to become crucial both to the MSP as well as to the customer. So to have that visibility to say, yes, we know that if there is a security breach, it's probably not going to be solved within 10 minutes. That's going to require some forensic analysis. What happened, how it happened, why it happened, who was involved.
Right.
And as a byproduct of that, uh, the customer needs to know well before it's solved, right? So as soon as and whether it's a 2 hour SLA or 20-minute SLA, if a breach is identified within those 2 hours, that the customer knows we're on it. We've got this and we're taking care of it, right?
Right.
So I definitely think that that you make a very good point from a managed services, but even managed security services perspective.
Yeah, yeah, the key is visibility and transparency. You're always reading an article about another outage or, things happened after the fact. And in certain cases, you don't find these things out until well after the fact. And I don't feel that's the best approach for it. And a lot of MSPs that I'm talking to agree with that, and they want to be more proactive and more transparent with that communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bob, I want to ask you just a little bit around the differences, right? Because we see the notion of major incident management a lot, but from a managed service provider perspective, it's a little bit different, right? Because they're handling incidents for an external organization. Normally, a major incident for them is going to be internal. So when we're talking to an enterprise retailer versus when we're talking to a managed service provider, from those contexts, how does stakeholder notification differ? Maybe even one in the way that we're doing it, all right, in the way that like an MSP does it versus a retailer does it, as well as the implications for each of those entities.
Sure. So they're, I mean, they're fundamentally the same. Uh, Customer communication. What we see in large enterprises is it's a lot broader. It'll include different groups. For example, um, if it's a key account, maybe the account executive wants to learn about it, right? Because they don't want to walk into a sales call or call a customer and get chewed out for something that they didn't know about. Maybe they can even work the relationship, save that customer. Um, in retail, we still see brick and mortar. Maybe the store's POS system is down or whatever it is, right? Um, so what we do see in a nutshell is probably more different groups in enterprise and also different communication channels, like the internal ones. Maybe they'll go on a Slack or MS Teams communication channel. The customer service department might get their own channel. Customers might get email. Stores could be on their own chat channel. Um, Especially the language has to be different. In other words, when you're communicating with a customer or business partner, you want to give them meaningful context. You don't want to tell them, you don't want to give them a system error message. Um, you know, SQL error 1200 occurred. We're deploying patch 126. No, and internal stakeholders, higher level people, director level VP, up to the C level. Maybe it's as simple as, you know, um, there's an outage. We've identified the cause. We're working on a fix. And maybe down a little bit lower, director levels, managers. We got a bridge started. We got some teams. We think we've identified a possible cause. So the language changes. And the thing is, the more kinds of messages and the more different groups that you have to send it to, the more complicated it becomes. And there's a greater chance to make a mistake, which means sending the wrong message to the wrong person, at the wrong time, at the wrong channel. We still see a lot of orgs are doing this. They're doing this, but they're doing it manually. They're making phone calls, sending emails. So you really want to kind of automate it as much as you can and really template it. Use templates, automate it so that customer service always gets it on their particular chat channel. The internal stakeholders get it on their chat channel. Maybe the AE wants to get a text message on his phone,
Mhm.
you know. So yeah, I would say chat. I would say Cam. The difference between the two is it's a lot broader on the enterprise, but fundamentally it's the same. I mean, you're trying to protect a relationship, save a customer. It's really what it's about.
Yeah.
Because in today's day, you read about things happening all the time, and I guess it varies with the severity of
Mhm.
the thing. But like what Josh said earlier, it kind of depends on the customer and the organization, and then again, what the problem is. So yeah, you want to step wisely, but you don't. We hear this from customers all the time. Cam, you know, we hear this from customers all the time when they were talking to us about using AlertOps. We don't have outages, we don't have problems, but I just had one a week ago, and my boss, it never happens, but a really bad one just happened.
This was the only one. This is the only one
Yeah,
that's ever happened.
never happens, will never happen again. But tell me a little bit about your product. Yeah,
Well, and
that's
that's
why we're
that
here.
that's the that's when you have to ask that question. So what would happen if, or how would you be impacted if? And the flexibility of stakeholder messaging, really helps that because you can present the what if scenarios that nobody likes buying insurance. I have car insurance, but you buy it because it offers that protection for those what ifs. And with this communication of stakeholders, that is a proactive way to get in front of those what ifs and really help the situation or incidents, to minimize that impact.
And sometimes, Josh, uh, customers are telling us it's kind of a value add service, right? That their customers actually appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, and I've spoken with a few customers that the idea has resonated so well that the dollar amount that you could put on that kind of feature, they're fine with whatever because the value is so great that whether they pay for it themselves or include it to the customer, they're willing to take that on, and they really see the value and the benefit of that.
Yeah, I no, I completely agree, and I like that. Uh, I like that analogy, right? That alerting is essentially your insurance when an incident happens, and the reason it's your insurance is it's ensuring a couple of things, right? It's ensuring the fact that internally you have the visibility necessary in order to resolve an issue, and then externally, it's ensuring one the fact that there's a level of confidence, right? There's a level of
Right.
confidence that your clients have in your ability to resolve something or address something. But even more than that, what Bob brought up, it's a relationship, right? It's ensuring your relationship. It's making sure that they know not only that you're on top of it, but you're a partner, right? You're communicating, you're working with them to communicate with them rather
Right.
than simply running through a checklist of line items. Okay, I got to do this, and this. But
They
yes,
they
I
want to
think
know that you're there holding their hand during this time. And that communication, while it's never great to have an impact or an incident, that communication gives them a little peace of mind to let them know that, you are there, you're working on it, we're on the same team.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bob and Josh, really appreciate you guys hopping on today. I think that we covered quite a bit of just around stakeholder notifications and how they're useful in general, as well as specifically in an MSP context. So really appreciate both you guys' times.